Every year on April 28th, workplaces across Canada and around the world pause to remember those who have lost their lives, suffered injuries, or fallen ill due to work-related incidents. Known as the National Day of Mourning in Canada and International Workers' Memorial Day globally, this solemn day is a powerful reminder of the human cost of unsafe work conditions and a call to action for safer workplaces everywhere. Welcome back to the channel where we highlight real safety, real stories, and real impact. Today, we're stepping into a moment of reflection and remembrance. We're talking about a day that is personal to so many in the working world, April 28th. The National Day of Mourning was first observed by Canadian unions in 1984, beginning in Sudbury, Ontario. 2 years later, the Canadian Labour Congress officially recognized the day, and by 1991, it became a national observance under the Workers' Mourning Day Act. The date, April 28th, was chosen to commemorate the anniversary of Ontario's Workers' Compensation Act of 1914, a symbolic nod to the long struggle for workers' rights and protections. Today, more than 100 countries observe April 28th as International Workers' Memorial Day. It's a time to remember the dead and fight for the living. That's more than a slogan, it's a philosophy, a commitment, a global movement. Let's talk about the numbers, because behind everyone is a name, a face, a story. According to the Association of Workers' Compensation Boards of Canada, in 2019 alone, 925 workplace fatalities were reported. Of those, 695 were linked to occupational disease, illnesses caused by exposure to harmful substances over time, and those are only the reported deaths. We know from global studies that many more cases of occupational disease go unrecognized and underreported. Think about that for a moment. That's nearly 3 deaths per day. And for every fatality, there are countless more injuries. Crush injuries, falls, burns, respiratory conditions, PTSD. These are not just statistics. These are people, parents, friends, co-workers, loved ones who went to work and never came home, or whose lives were forever changed. And the pain doesn't stop at the worker. It extends to their families, their children, their communities. It lingers in the memories of colleagues who witnessed the incident. It lives in the hearts of safety professionals who ask themselves, what more could we have done? On April 28th, ceremonies are held across the country, in offices, on construction sites, at city halls and union halls. Flags are lowered to half-mast, black ribbons are worn, candles are lit, and at 11 a.m., a moment of silence is observed. That silence can be deafening. It reminds us of what's been lost and what must never be forgotten. But the Day of Mourning is not just about remembrance, it's also about resolve. We honor the fallen by taking action, by speaking up when we see something unsafe, by listening when someone raises a concern, by investing in training, equipment, and mental health, by making safety a shared responsibility. It's a day to ask ourselves, what are we doing to prevent the next name from being added to that list? What systems need to change? What conversations need to happen? What support do our teams need to feel safe, seen, and heard? Let me tell you a story that really hit home. A young worker, just 19 years old, was crushed between a forklift and a wall in a warehouse. It was his second week on the job. He hadn't received proper safety orientation. He didn't know the blind spots. The tragedy made headlines. But here's what didn't: his coworkers' trauma, the supervisor's guilt, the ripple effect that tore through that small company. Another story comes from a mine in British Columbia where an experienced worker was killed in a cave-in. The cause? A known structural weakness that hadn't been addressed. The crew knew it was risky, but the job had to get done. Afterward, new protocols were written, new equipment brought in, but it was too late for him. These are preventable stories, and April 28th gives us the space to feel that grief and channel it into purpose. Here's how you can honor the National Day of Mourning. Hold a moment of silence with your team. Share a story of someone affected by a workplace incident. Commit to one new safety initiative this year, whether it's a training program, a hazard assessment, or a peer support system. Educate yourself and your crew on workers' rights and responsibilities. Attend or host a local ceremony. Many are open to the public and available online. Create a safety pledge wall at work where staff can write a personal commitment. Launch a mental health check-in initiative, because emotional safety matters too. Above all, talk about it. Keep the conversation going beyond April 28th. Because every time we talk about safety, we honor those who can't speak for themselves. Every time we speak up, we create a ripple effect that could save a life. This day is also a reminder that safety isn't just policy, it's culture, it's leadership, it's listening, it's understanding that the pressure to meet deadlines should never outweigh the need to protect a life. It's reinforcing the belief that safety isn't a cost, it's a value. For companies, it's a moment to reflect on whether their safety programs are reactive or proactive. Are hazards only addressed after someone gets hurt? Or is there a system in place that empowers workers to raise concerns without fear? Are safety audits treated as opportunities or obligations? For unions and worker groups, it's a chance to elevate worker voices' push for stronger protections and make sure legislation doesn't lag behind reality. For regulators and policymakers, it's a prompt to review data, close loopholes, and resource enforcement bodies properly. So we ask you, who are you remembering this April 28th? What will you do to protect the people you work with? Drop a comment and share your story. Let's create a community that remembers, respects, and takes action. If this video resonated with you, share it with your team. Let's make April 28th more than a date. Let's make it a turning point. Stay safe, stay vigilant, and let's fight for the living.